Czechast, a podcast in English about Czech and Moravian society, history, culture and economy.
Hello and welcome to Czechast, the podcast where we explore everything Czech, from culture and history to science and innovation. I'm your host, Vít Pohanka, and in today's episode, we're diving into the world of Czech scientists working abroad and the fascinating journey of one man who's helping them connect and thrive on the global stage. My guest today is Matouš Glanc, a brilliant scientist whose career path has been anything but conventional. He began in the arts, enrolling in a competitive photography program. But as he soon realized, that wasn't where his true passion lay.
I managed to get into photography program at the university, which was quite selective, so I was happy. But then, very soon I realized that everybody who had been telling me I should do something with my mind, that they were probably correct, because I felt intellectually bored with the arts, and then I was lost. I didn't know what to do.
Eventually, Matouš found his way into science, where he thrived in a laboratory environment. But after years of working in research, he began to notice something was missing.
One of the things I missed in that job was some diversity in the social interactions, so to say, because in a lab environment, one always meets very similar kind of people. It's the colleagues at work. They all do the same thing, and then you go to a conference and you meet more people doing the same thing, same job as you, just somewhere else. And at some point I realized I missed more diverse social interactions. So now when I get to talk to politicians and business people and lawyers and scientists, I get energized somehow by that.
So today Matouš leads Czechast, an organization that builds bridges between Czech scientists working abroad and their home country. It's a mission fueled by his own experiences and a vision for tackling the so-called brain drain in a way that fosters innovation and connection.
The image in the general public often is that we need to stop the brain drain by keeping people from leaving, by keeping the brains in Czechia. And we say this doesn't work. Then we just reinforce this isolation, which hinders progress. What we need to do is to encourage people to go abroad, and then provide opportunities for them to come back and to attract elites from other countries to go to Czechia, and to be supportive of people going both ways. That's the solution that we want to help implement.
In today's episode, Matouš shares more about his fascinating career journey and his mission to reshape how we think about mobility, innovation and collaboration. And just to explain the ambience, we met in Vienna's Café Schwarzenberg as Matouš was attending a meeting of Czech scientists working in Austria, co-organized by the Czech Embassy and Center in the Austrian capital. So, whether you are relaxing with a cup of coffee or tea, or adjusting your pace while walking or jogging, let's dive into the conversation with Matouš Glanc.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.
I would say I'm a scientist. I'm not a researcher anymore. I have a background in molecular biology, plant molecular biology to be specific. I carried out research in this field abroad in Austria, in Belgium, and then after a postdoc phase, at some point I felt at a crossroads career-wise where to go further, and then I decided to leave plant biology research but stay in science. And now I run the organization Czechast in Science, which aims to unite Czech scientists worldwide. The Czech science diaspora, as we like to say in English. In Czech this doesn't work so well, but in English it works. So we unite this Czech science diaspora, and then we aim to leverage the potential of this community to inspire and improve science in Czechia to be more open and more world-class and ambitious.
We will definitely get back to Czechast and to other activities, but if you don't mind me asking, to kind of go back, to your childhood, what inspired you to go into science? Why science? Why not humanities? Are you from Prague, by the way?
I'm from Prague, and if you want to know what inspired me to do science, we don't need to go back to my childhood, because I was not inspired to do science at all back then. I would say in middle school and high school, I had good results in most classes, and I was what you would call the study type. I think that was me, which was great. I didn't have to study hard for my exams at high school, and I had time for other things. But the downside was that it was hard for me to choose anything, because I was doing okay at everything. And then my math teacher thought I should do math, and the history teacher thought I should do history and languages, and I couldn't choose. And then at some point when I was 14 or 15. With my father, who's a professor in Slavistics and culture studies, he got a Fulbright in the US, and I got a chance to spend a year in New York, which was fantastic. And then we had a really charismatic photography teacher at high school, and I got amazed with photography. And from then until the end of high school, I had a very clear vision that I would be a photographer, and I had no plan B, and I was going for that. And I managed to get into a photography program at the university, which was quite selective, so I was happy. But then, very soon I realized that everybody who had been telling me I should do something with my mind, that they were probably correct, because I felt intellectually bored with the arts, and then I was lost. I didn't know what to do.
Hang on. So how old were you? When you decided, that you want to do more than just photography?
This was after first year at university, so I was 21 years old. Yeah, and then basically it was a serendipity that brought me to biology. I literally took a list of things one could study in Czechia, and I was crossing off things I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do humanities for some reason. I wanted to be in touch with something real. And then I was also crossing off some programs that would prepare you for one specific job. I wanted to keep more doors open, so I was crossing off things, and biology was left last. So I thought, let's go with that. Really.
Again, we will get back to that, but I'm just curious. Again, we will get back to that. But if I may ask about New York. So you spent a year in New York. We are talking New York City. Was it Manhattan, or where did you stay?
Manhattan, Upper West Side. Yeah.
Upper West Side. Well, good for you.
Yeah, this was great. Yeah, very, very formative years. I remember also back then I was so amazed not only with the New York, but I got the chance to go to a really, really very specific school, which was very unusual. It was public, so we didn't have to pay for that, which wouldn't have been an option, but it was, private-like. Very.
And your dad got the Fulbright, I don't know, at Columbia University, or?
It was his Fulbright was officially in Albany, but he said, no way, we are going to Albany. So long before COVID, he managed to somehow just work from a distance from the city and just go there a couple of times during that year, a few times.
So what was it like? For you, a boy from Prague coming to New York?
Yeah, it was a whole new world, and I was amazed. And I wanted to, after that year, I really wanted to stay there and finish high school there. And the people at the school I went to, they were quite open to that. My parents were open to that. The reason it didn't happen in the end was accommodation, because I was too young to live on my own, and we didn't find anybody who would be willing to take the responsibility for me to stay with them, and also somehow financially it was difficult, but that was not the biggest problem. The biggest problem was that we didn't have anybody who would take it upon themselves to take care of me.
The reason why I'm asking is that for me it took me a long time to get used to New York. When I worked as a correspondent for Czech radio in the US, I was in Washington, D.C. And when I traveled to New York, I would get off the train at Pennsylvania Station, and I felt like I was hit in the face. It was like, here is New York. And it took me several visits, to really get accommodated, because New York, I think, is a different beast. But that's not... Okay,
yeah,
so
definitely.
Was it formative for you?
It was definitely formative. I guess it also took some time to get used to it, but, it was my first time. And, so I guess it took a couple of days, and then that was it. It was my first time, and I had to spend the whole year there. No, I loved it.
And do you ever come back?
Then some years later I went back. I spent a few weeks in Washington D.C. at a different school, still in high school, and then I went back to New York, and I wandered the streets basically on my own for 2 weeks. And since then, I haven't been back to the US for somehow. Of course, in my research career, I traveled around a bit to conferences and so on. But somehow I never came back to the US. So I'm looking forward to my next visit, and I'll make sure to pass by New York as well.
Okay, so back to your studies. So you crossed out all those different possibilities and you decided for biology because, again, you might have mentioned it, but you can repeat yourself. Why biology? I mean, it was just, why not physics? I don't know, why not chemistry?
Those were the options. My mindset was that I wanted to do something real, something. I wanted to do some hard science, something really material. But at the same time, I wanted to have a chance to be creative and find some intellectual satisfaction in the work by make new things and so on. I found chemistry boring for some reason in high school. So when I looked back, biology was the most appealing to me. I was considering maths and physics, but I thought I wouldn't be able to catch up with math after skipping it for several years. I thought that was too difficult. With biology, I felt it was possible to jump back on, and that turned out to be the case.
If you were to explain to us lay people who never studied biology or who studied humanities like me, what sort of field of biology did you feel to be drawn to? I mean, what raised your interest? I mean,
Initially, I had no idea. When I came to this faculty of science, I had no idea basically what biology was about. I managed to fill in enough gaps to pass the admission, but I didn't have an idea. And very quickly, I got intrigued by cell biology. Because there is something very, very mechanistic in how things work at the cellular level. Those are somehow very clear systems and very, very, very intricate, delicate mechanisms that drive the world basically. And this was something intriguing, how something on a very small scale determines how things work on a bigger scale, and that one can really understand the mechanisms and these nanometer scales. There are machineries that one can really imagine mechanistically how they work. So I got from the first lecture on the topic of cell biology, I got intrigued by that, and then I have stayed with that basically the whole time.
So cellular biology, yeah? So you became kind of enchanted by that, right? How did it go on? I mean, about your studies. If you can just briefly, say how you started your academic career.
Yeah. I studied at the Charles University Faculty of Science in Prague. Then, in the first year of my masters, I went to Germany, to Karlsruhe for an Erasmus, because I felt somehow that there is a bigger world than the faculty in Vienna, which turned out to be true. And then I saw another level at which science can be done. And then I thought, if I continue in science, I want to do it to my best possibilities or capabilities, and that would be abroad. So I knew I would go abroad if I were to continue. In those student years, I was involved in two different non-profit organizations. One of them I founded myself, and the other I got involved at a later stage. But I did a bit of management in those two organizations.
So what were they about?
The one I started with two friends of mine that was focused on free time activities for youth with disabilities, mental or physical, and the other one was focused on experiential education and prevention of risky behavior at schools. So we did programs for school children using these experiential methods to prevent some of those.
What kind of risky behavior are we talking about?
Generally, this is called general prevention. So by building communication skills among the kids, you can prevent all kinds of risk behaviors, violence, drugs, everything. But it's not aimed at one specific behavior. It's just by enabling people to have constructive relationships, you prevent all kinds of unwanted behavioral patterns. And then
why that? I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just wondering. I mean, what kind of inspired you? Studying cellular biology.
It was serendipity. I was somehow in my personal situation. During my studies, I needed to make some extra income, so I was looking for some student jobs, and then I came across this organization. They were looking for instructors. So outside of the semester, I went to instruct these programs. I found some satisfaction in that. I was glad to see some impact of what I was doing, apart from making some extra money as a student job. In my childhood, I was quite active in Scouts, so some of those ideals came back there in this job. And then when these people were looking again for somebody to take some more responsibilities of the organizational things, I saw that as a nice opportunity to learn something new, and it was serendipity again, basically. But anyway, I felt at a crossroads towards the end of my masters, whether to continue in this non-profit management world, let's say, or whether to go for science. And then I thought, if science, then we go abroad.
And why abroad? Why not stay in Czechia? If you were to explain to someone, from the country. I mean, is Czechia? I don't want to use the word backward or something. I mean, it's just
no, but we might get back to that a bit later, maybe. But the scientific environment in Czechia is still somewhat isolated and closed into itself. I think this is heritage of the communist times, when it was really physically isolated. Now there are no physical barriers anymore, and there are many cases where it's not like that, and where people are really open and embedded in the global science community. There are definitely examples where this works, but in general, this is still a burden that the Czech science carries with it. And then I had this experience. When I went to Germany for a semester, I saw that things are really done at a different pace, a different level, very, very different mindset, somehow much more goal oriented, much more ambitious, much more at the same time open and friendly. And then I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. I saw I already had the experience that there are places outside of Czechia where science is done in a better way.
So how did you go about it? I mean, you finished your master's, right? Mm-hmm. And then I suppose you decided to go for a PhD, and you were looking for programs elsewhere.
Basically, I was already then with my fiancée. We wanted to live abroad. That was another reason for me to choose a PhD, because we did want to go abroad, also for personal reasons. And then exactly, I was looking I didn't have a massive network, but I already had some contacts, and one of them was Professor Jiří Frimmel, whom I attended one of his courses, which he did once a year in Brno. I attended that course, and he was a really, really successful person in our field. I knew his works from the literature, from the textbooks, and then I saw him at this one course. And back then, I guess I made some kind of an impression, because he said if I were later to look for a position to get in touch. So I got in touch with him, and in the end I ended up in his lab in Austria, and I did a PhD there. Somehow there was
say there, but we are sitting in Vienna, so it was here. Right?
It was here. It was
near Vienna,
almost in Vienna. Yeah. Basically, yes. In the end, Eva Zajímalová, who then later became and still is the president of the Czech Academy of Sciences, she was not in that function back then yet. She was still running her lab, and they had an active collaboration with Jiří. And my wife was still needed to stay another year in Prague, so we found like an unofficial co-tutel, or unofficial double supervision, where I had Jiří and Eva as my two supervisors, and then I carried out my research in Austria, around the corner from here. In the end, I then defended it in Prague. So it was this hybrid twofold supervision from Jiří Frimmel and Eva Zajímalová.
I mean, if you were to explain to someone, because this will probably be listened to by people, I don't know, maybe in the US or in Australia, who are these two people, if you were to, briefly introduce them?
Right, so Jiří Frimmel is really a world-class leading scientist in the field of plant cell and developmental biology, who at the end of 90s went to pursue a PhD in Germany, and from then he has stayed abroad, and he has really made several major contributions to the entire field, and has been awarded numerous awards, and is one of the most broadly cited Czech scientists in all fields. And Eva Zažimalova is another prominent scientist in that field. And then, apart from her scientific work, she became the president of the Czech Academy of Sciences, which is a national, the biggest research meta institute, which has over 50 different institutes specializing in different fields. And there's this organization which is from the political point of view at the same level as one of the ministries, and she is running that. But back then she was still an active researcher.
Okay.
No.
So, 3 years here, right? In Austria, about 3 years.
Yeah, I did 1 year in Prague and then 3 years here. Yeah.
What was it like? I mean, to me, and I'm sorry, I mean, this is not about science, but this is more about life. I mean, I feel kind of at home in Vienna. I feel that it's very close to us, no?
Yeah, me too. Especially since those times, it has always felt like home. Yes, I mean there's Vienna, and then there was Klosterneuburg where I worked, and those were kind of two different worlds. Vienna is really feels very much like Prague, a bit bigger, a bit more international, but still like that. One has to speak a bit of German to get along because people are not really willing to always speak English. So it was familiar, and it was not difficult to settle here at the Institute of Science and Technology in Klosterneuburg, just on the outskirts of Vienna. That's really a very dynamic, ambitious, purpose-driven international environment where there are very few Austrians. Most of the community is really international, and they are constantly building new buildings and recruiting new research groups, and they really have this vision of building a world-class leading research institute at the outskirts of Vienna to compete with the Ivy League universities and Weizmann in Israel and so on. And I have to say they are doing a pretty good job at that. And this was clear already back then. Since the time I spent there, the institute has again grown double, I think, in size. But already then it was this very vibrant, very very international environment, very different from the city of Vienna, I would say.
You are listening to Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. I'm Vít Pohanka, the host, and today I'm talking to Matouš Glanc, a scientist and the director of Czechast. Coming back to your career, so you got your PhD and then you started working where?
Then I went to Belgium, to Ghent for a postdoc. This is something in the academic career take between a PhD and getting an independent position. Most people do a postdoc, which is still to some extent considered a training phase, because the hard skills in science as well as the soft skills are many. So the training is really very long. So this is still to some extent considered a training, but at the same time one is already an expert in their field with the PhD. So generally in a PhD one learns how to do research, and then after getting the PhD one should already know that, and then as a postdoc you are trained in leading others basically and preparing to for the next step, while at the same time being the main driving force of research. So I did a postdoc like this. I went to Belgium to another research group that was close to my own interests, and I was a good fit for them. And there I chose a project. I got some funding for that, and I just carried on with my research with a slightly different research question in a different setting, but.
You make it sound extremely easy. I mean, you just went from one place to another. But I suppose there's fierce competition, no? As well.
There is to some extent, but it goes both ways. I think many people towards the end of their PhD they are searching for postdoc positions, and there are definitely places where it's also quite selective or competitive. But at the same time, for the professors or the group leaders to get qualified people willing to do postdocs with them, that's also quite difficult. So
it's a challenge, yeah.
To find people with the right skills and with the right mindset, that's also not easy for them. So it goes both ways, and I think many people underestimate that. Many people, when they're looking for a postdoc opportunity, they jump on the first offer they get, and they don't realize that maybe for for their fusiliers, it's even more difficult to get postdocs than for them to get the position. And I was lucky since I did this and did my PhD here at IST. I had a good CV. I had good recommendations. So I was to some extent aware that I could choose. And then we are looking for. We already had a family with my wife. We had one child and the second on the way. So we are looking for a place where we would be happy bringing our children up.
Kind of stability, I suppose, and about local stability in the sense that.
Yeah, for example, we didn't consider going to the US because
it would be too difficult.
Because financially it wouldn't make sense in our situation. So we were looking for places where we could make a living, of one postdoc salary, with almost 2 children. And then that narrowed the search space to several countries in Europe, basically. And then in those places, I was looking for institutes or research groups that were doing something I was interested in and something where I could contribute. And then I found several, and I contacted those people. We went to visit them, and there again it was anecdotal because towards what you asked, because I remember also I was a bit nervous, like, will I make a good enough impression? Will I be able to get that position? And then when I went there for an interview with this one professor, he took me to lunch with his colleagues, and then one or two others, they also asked, but are you only considering to join his group, or do you want to also have a chat with us? And then I saw, I can. I want to find this place, but they are also interested in me, which was an important experience. I think most people at the end of their PhD should realize that they are hot on the market.
But now we are sitting here and talking to each other because there was an event organized by Czechast, which is an organization that you lead. If you were to introduce Czechast, and perhaps another part of that question, what made you switch the purely research career to doing this?
Yeah. Czechast is a network of the Czech science diaspora, of Czech scientists around the world, and those that come back to Czechia with an international experience. And the mission of the organization, apart from building this community and supporting this community, mission is then to transfer the international experience of this community to the Czech system and to make it more like abroad, to change this somewhat closed culture of the Czech science to make it more global.
I think you already indicated that, but do you think it's still kind of the baggage of the years of communism, of the decades of communism?
To a large extent, yes. I think this historical memory is quite long, and I think it is
because
still
I would think
rooted
already there's a. One generation of scientists already grew up,
Yeah, but the people in charge, the people in the top management at the highest positions, they were still brought up in that time, or if they were educated after communism already fell, their teachers grew up in that system and didn't know anything else. So there's this self-propagating mechanism where when something deeply embedded in the system doesn't change even in 10 years. It can, but it needs some clear strategy from the very top at a national level, and this hasn't happened yet, and it's one of our aims to make that happen.
And that's why you are involved with Czechast.
That's what I do now.
Contribute to changing.
Exactly. So we try to, and I think we are quite successfully doing that already by building relationships with the key decision makers at the research institutions in Czechia, but also at the governmental level, at the ministries and in the parliament, and all those key stakeholders. We are building relationships, and then we are taking input from this global community of Czech researchers who really have experience from the top world-class top institutions. And we take this input and we transfer it into policy recommendations that we then talk about to people in the decision-making positions, and then we try to influence to change the system by a combination of a bottom-up approach through the community with the top-down approach through this advocacy work with the policymakers. That's what we do. And to the second part of your question of why I left molecular biology to do this kind of work.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, sometimes to some extent, yes. I still try to be in touch. So from time to time, I still consult with my colleagues on their projects, or I try to read a research paper now and then. Now I think tomorrow I have to record a video talk for a webinar on my latest research, the latest paper we published. Somebody from the journal now asked me to deliver a webinar, so I'm quite looking forward to that, and I welcome these opportunities to stay in touch. So that's why I say I still identify as a scientist, and I say I left active research but not science as such. And the reason is
So I'm sorry that I jumped again up to it, but so was it a difficult decision to make?
Yes and no. I think it was not an abrupt decision. There was a period of probably even several years when I was coming to realize I probably didn't want to do the classical academic career track any longer. One of the things I missed in that job was some diversity in the social interactions, so to say, because in a lab environment one always meets very similar kind of people. It's the colleagues at work. They all do the same thing, and then you go to a conference and you meet more people doing the same thing, same job as you, just somewhere else. And at some point I realized I missed more diverse social interactions. So now when I get to talk to politicians and business people and lawyers and scientists, I get energized somehow by that. That's one thing. And another thing in the field which I studied is this plant cell biology. It's really, or maybe it's not the field, maybe it's the research questions that I was involved in. They are really very fundamental. I was studying the polarity of plant cells, some individual proteins that contribute to how cells within plants orient in space, and how they're aware of where is up and where is down, and how this is coordinated across the plant body. And this is very intriguing. It's a lot of fun. I spent many hundreds of hours behind a microscope where one can look at these things, and then you can take those proteins with the colorful marks and look at it in real time and make movies, and it's fascinating. But also it's really so fundamental that it was difficult even for me to see in the long term some purpose there. And of course, it is very clear that you never know which knowledge will contribute to some advance, some practical advances, and this very fundamental research in any field is extremely important to build a knowledge base that any innovation then can build upon, and it's unpredictable where that will stem from. I definitely don't want to doubt that, but for me personally, I lacked some kind of more direct impact of my actions and some more direct satisfaction, and this materialized then when I was in Belgium. Most of the time I spent there was COVID time. And then I remember very, very clearly when for some weeks the lab was just closed. We couldn't go to do our experiments, and then there was a policy that we should still by default stay at home, and only who had to do some really necessary work was allowed to go to the lab. And many people saw that as an instruction to just go back to work, and they said everything we do is essential, every experiment is necessary, so they just went to back to work. But I thought, people in the healthcare system, they are kind of risking their lives to keep society going. And from what I do, what is really essential? Nothing. I thought, like, if I stop my experiments for another 2 months, nobody will realize, nothing will happen. That was one thing. That was one impulse, and then just as we were getting out of COVID, the war in Ukraine started, which was also something that personally touched me somehow. And then I really fully came to realize, okay, so the world is dealing with these crises, and maybe for this stage of the history we know just enough about the polarity of plant cells, and maybe I should spend my time doing other things. So I think that was this moment when I wanted to do something else with more impact, and I didn't know what. I also felt I've now spent almost 10 years at quite high-profile science environments abroad, and that would also be a pity to waste somehow. So I wanted to find some role where I would be able to benefit from this experience, and I had no idea what it would be. And then with the Czechast at some point, in response to the Russian aggression in Ukraine, Czechast that I knew about, but I was not somehow actively involved. They were looking for somebody to coordinate help to Ukrainian scientists fleeing to Czechia because we had this community building toolkit and community building experience that we thought we could very well use to help, another kind of science diaspora coming from Ukraine to Czechia. And I felt that was something necessary, and where I could contribute with my experience from the managerial side, but also by knowing the science environment. So I started doing that. That was very satisfying somehow to really see this impact I was lacking in the lab, where we were able to find jobs, for example, to people who were fleeing from Ukraine to Czechia looking for new jobs in their very specific fields, and we were able to help them through our network of Czech scientists. We were able to make these matches, and people not only could make a living as refugees, but they were able to continue their career and contribute to science, which was great. And then so the Czechast started as a volunteer-based, really grassroots movement, but they were gradually professionalizing. And then at that point, the people who founded the organization, they started looking for somebody to take it on full time as a director to take it to the next level. And they launched an open call for that position. And I felt this was it. I felt this was it because when I also looked back to the end of my studies, where I was somehow deciding whether to go for science or whether to do some management in the non-profit world, I felt this was a connection of those two things. And back then it was a crossroad, and now the two paths somehow reconnected. And now I feel this is very much the case.
You are listening to Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. I'm Vít Pohanka, the host, and today I'm talking to Matouš Glanc, a scientist and the director of Czechast. If you were to introduce Czechast to the listeners in a few numbers, I mean, just, and how does it work,
Yeah, very, very important. So we have a community of 1,000+ Czech scientists around the world. Many are in Europe and in the US. Few in other parts of the world.
When you say we have, I mean they are registered, they cooperate, they are interested in your activities, right?
Exactly. Yes, we organize events. So a key part of our mission is building this community, and we do this by an online platform which we have on our website called a Map of Scientists, where everybody can register. There we have a couple hundred registered participants, and then we organize events where people can really meet and build this community more physically. And to that end, we organize a yearly Christmas conference in Prague, because many people from the community come home to their parents and their families for Christmas. So that's a unique time space point where people can meet from different places. So this event is attended also by a few hundred people every year. Then we organize local events such as the one yesterday here in Vienna, where people in Vienna and around in Austria have a chance to meet.
You should explain. I mean, this was a meeting in Vienna. I mean, for Czech scientists, young Czech scientists who are searching here.
Yeah, not only young. We invite scientists of all generations. It is true that the younger ones tend to maybe attend more. Exactly. So this is a meetup of Czech scientists working in Austria. We had, I think, 50 people yesterday, and we do maybe 6 or 8 similar events like this in different places where the community is strong.
So it probably seems pretty self-evident, but if you were, again, I mean, to explain, why is it important that they meet physically, that they sit together for one afternoon, listen to someone inspirational like Professor Phil?
Yeah, it has two key aspects. So people typically at an earlier phase in their career, they want to get the most out of their international experience, and by connecting with others, they can share their experiences. They can draw inspiration from somebody else in the community. They can help each other when they are writing grants, looking for positions. These things, like I was telling you, when you are looking for the next step in your career, you don't know how things work. So when somebody who has been there can tell you how that works, it definitely makes it easier. And then, as I also mentioned, our mission to improve the Czech science system with this international experience. This is not something we made up. This is something also which is coming from the community, because we did a survey at one point, and it turned out that more than 80% of the people abroad want this. They want to have opportunities to influence what's going on with science in Czechia, whether by returning home or from a distance. So we feel this as a strong mandate, and then we try to provide these opportunities. And then by connecting people with one another abroad, but also with their counterparts in Czechia, we enable somehow this transfer of experience.
I suppose networking is the word.
Networking is the buzzword there. Yes. Yeah.
You know, when we talk about our Czech compatriots, krajani, people often have this idea, and it seems to me that it's like that in the Czech Parliament as well, that these are the old, Czech Americans who walk in folk costumes, etc. But what I really like about you, I mean, you bring this to a completely new level, right? I mean, you are...
Yeah. This word krajane, we don't use that because I think it exactly has these connotations, and as we said at the start, the word diaspora works well, and yes, I mean, and this is a part of population that's constantly renewing. People just go abroad, and this is great.
My question actually was, I mean, do you think politicians understand that? I mean, do you get some positive response?
Yes, I think definitely the politicians realize that it's to the broader public. It's somehow more difficult to explain the value in international mobility. You know, there is a lot of talk about this brain drain, Odliv Moscow, which is of course a thing that we need to do something about. But the image in the general public often is that we need to stop the brain drain by keeping people from leaving, by keeping the brains in Czechia. And we say this doesn't work. Then we just reinforce this isolation, which hinders progress. What we need to do is to encourage people to go abroad, and then provide opportunities for them to come back and to attract elites from other countries to go to Czechia, and to be supportive of people going both ways. That's the solution that we want to help implement. Science is a great area of activity, which is really creative. The sky is the limit. You can do anything, and now with the speed at which the world is changing with AI, for example, that's only the best evidence for that. So definitely go for science, and I can definitely recommend to everybody, be it in science or other sectors, just going abroad. It's one of the best things I think one can do to broaden your horizons. And then if people want to bring something back to their homeland from abroad, that's even better. But just go for it, go abroad and do what you like, do what you're passionate about.
I just wonder, because this is called Czechast. Is it still important to be a Czech at this time, at this age? What sort of role does nationality? Is this an open-ended? I'm wondering myself,
Yeah, I think this is up to everybody, up for everybody to decide. I don't think there is any specific value in being Czech. If somebody feels like a European, then they are European, and this is fine.
But you are called Czechspats.
We are called Czechspats because we chose a mission, but it's really a question of scope. We don't see any extra value in being Czech. We just see. I mean, yes, I guess we do have some bonds to the country and to the system there. But me personally, I just see some room for improvement, and I want to contribute to that. And it's easier in Czechia where I'm born and where I understand the system and where I know the people. It's maybe somehow intuitively closer, but I'm not a nationalist.
I didn't think so. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure and a privilege.
And I hope to speak to you soon again. And have a nice trip back to Prague.
Thank you. Have a great day yourself.
And that wraps up this episode of Czechast. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Matouš Glanc and found his insights as inspiring as I did. It's always fascinating to hear the stories of people who break new ground and challenge conventional ways of thinking. But now for something completely different, yet closely tied to the traditional Czech way of life: mushroom picking. 3 out of every 4 Czechs participate in this national pastime. In contrast, mushroom foraging is extremely rare in British and other English-speaking nations. This cultural divide is confirmed by James Wood, proud founder and owner of Totally Wild UK, a company that organizes foraging courses. The main goal? To inspire people with the incredible flavors nature has to offer. But even as James and his team teach their students how to easily distinguish good, edible mushrooms from those that can make you sick or worse, Britons just seem to harbour an innate fear of fungi.
We've not done it. It's not pastime. It's not normal for us to go out and pick these things. We've actually ended up instilling a fear into the next generation just because we're not confident. So let's say one of our children goes out and looks like they're going to pick a mushroom. We would be so worried that it's going to be deadly toxic that we'd try and put fear into them about it. Don't touch that. It could kill you. Yeah. And then that obviously makes them scared of picking mushrooms. It has a further knock-on effect of them teaching their kids and all of that. It puts fear into learning.
So, in our next episode, you will hear not only from James, but also from 3 very serious Czech experts on the culture of mushrooming and the science of mycology, as I delve into the mystery behind the divide between so-called mycophiles and mycophobes. If you enjoyed this or any other episodes, don't forget to subscribe to Czechast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It really helps us reach more listeners. You can also share this episode with anyone who might be interested in stories of Czech innovation and global connections. I'm Vít Pohanka, thank you for listening, and until next time, take care and stay curious. Naslyšenou.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.